Hello, everyone. Today we're talking about something serious, complex, and deeply unsettling. In early 2026, Minneapolis became the center of national attention after two fatal shootings involving federal immigration agents. These weren't border crossings. These weren't remote areas. These shootings happened inside a major U.S. city, involving American citizens, and they triggered protests, political backlash, and intense questions about federal power. So, what actually happened? Why were ICE and Border Patrol agents operating in Minneapolis? And why has this situation become so controversial? Let's break it down calmly, clearly, and with context. Why were federal agents in Minneapolis? To understand the shootings, we first need to understand why federal immigration agents were there at all. In January 2026, the federal government launched a large immigration enforcement operation across parts of the Midwest, including Minnesota. This operation involved ICE, Customs and Border Protection, and other Department of Homeland Security units. What made this unusual was the scale. Minneapolis is not a border city. It's hundreds of miles from Canada. Yet residents began seeing armed federal agents, unmarked vehicles, and coordinated enforcement actions in residential neighborhoods. Local officials said they were not fully informed about the operation. Community leaders said fear spread quickly not just among undocumented immigrants, but among citizens who felt confused and unsafe. This tension set the stage for what happened next. The first shooting, Renee Good. On January 7, 2026, Renee Good, a 37-year-old Minneapolis resident and U.S. citizen, was shot and killed by an ICE officer. According to federal authorities, agents were attempting to carry out an enforcement action when Good allegedly drove her vehicle toward officers. They described it as a vehicle assault and said the officer fired in self-defense. But almost immediately, questions began to emerge. Video footage from nearby cameras and bystanders started circulating online. Independent analysts and civil rights groups reviewed the footage and raised serious concerns. From some angles, the officer appeared not directly in front of the vehicle. In fact, the car seemed to be moving away when shots were fired. The autopsy later revealed that Renee Good was shot multiple times, including a fatal head wound. For many people, this was the moment when trust collapsed. Was deadly force truly unavoidable? Was the officer's life in immediate danger? Or did this represent a tragic and unnecessary use of power? Those questions remain at the center of ongoing investigations. Public reaction and growing anger. After Renee Good's death, Minneapolis erupted in grief and anger. Vigils were held. Protests filled the streets. Many residents pointed out that this city still carries trauma from past police-involved killings. City leaders demanded transparency. Activists demanded accountability. And many residents asked a simple question. Why does federal immigration enforcement involve deadly force against citizens? Federal authorities defended their agents. But the gap between official statements and what people believed they saw on video only widened. And then it happened again. The second shooting, Alex Jeffrey Preddy. On January 24th, 2026, just weeks later, Alex Jeffrey Preddy, a 37-year-old ICU nurse and U.S. citizen, was shot and killed during an encounter with federal agents in South Minneapolis. This time, the situation involved multiple agents and escalated into a physical confrontation. According to authorities, a Border Patrol agent fired several shots during the struggle. Witnesses described chaos. Videos captured shouting, confusion, and a heavy federal presence. For many people, this second shooting confirmed their worst fears. That the first death wasn't an isolated incident. Two citizens. Two fatal shootings. Same city. Same month. Same federal agencies. That's when protests intensified, political and national reactions. Minnesota's governor publicly condemned the shootings and called the situation deeply disturbing. The mayor of Minneapolis demanded that federal agents leave the city. At the national level, reactions split sharply along political lines. Some leaders defended the agents, arguing they were operating under dangerous conditions. Others said the federal government had crossed a line bringing militarized enforcement into civilian spaces. The unrest grew so serious that major events in Minneapolis were postponed, including professional sports games. The message was clear. This wasn't just a law enforcement issue anymore. It was a national crisis of trust, legal and civil rights questions. Under U.S. law, police and federal agents are allowed to use deadly force only when there is an imminent threat to life. Civil rights experts argue that both Minneapolis shootings raise serious doubts about whether that standard was met. Another major concern is accountability. Federal agents are often investigated internally, with limited local oversight. State officials complained that they were kept out of key investigative steps. Groups like Human Rights Watch argue that this lack of transparency undermines democracy itself. When force is used in the name of the state, the public has the right to know exactly what this means. The Minneapolis shootings of 2026 are not just about two tragic deaths. They are about the reach of federal power, the limits of law enforcement authority, and the fragile relationship between communities and the institutions meant to protect them. Whether these shootings are ultimately ruled justified or not, one thing is certain. America is still struggling with how force is used and who is held responsible when things go wrong. And that conversation is far from over.